Hey, what's up guys? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. Here in this lesson I just want to give you a few quick tips about how you can take some basic major and minor chord progressions, but instead of playing them in the open position like G major, C major, D minor, D major, things like that, by just strumming open chords, if you take those chords and instead play them higher up on the fretboard using basic bar chord shapes, and then also using your fingers to play specific notes of the bar chord shapes instead of the pick, you can get some really, really cool sounds out of your playing. So that's what this lesson is going to be all about. There's going to be multiple different things that you can do. So if this is something that you think you may be interested in, stay tuned. All right, so everything that we're going to be doing is going to be part of a key, pretty much. So like 95% in key, with the exception of just one chord. So you can always determine which chords are part of any given key by using your circle of fifths. So let's use the key of G major / E minor. It's a relative major minor pair. Let's play in that key for this lesson. So looking at your circle of fifths, you can always find the chords that are found in any given key by looking at the groupings of 6. So in this particular key, you have these 3 major chords and you have these 3 minor chords. So you can kind of play any of those chords in any order. Whatever, that was just completely random. I just played all the chords that are found in the key of E major / G minor, or the 3 major and the 3 minor chords that are found in that key, and I just played them in any random order, and everything sounded good. That's what diatonic chords do. They sound good when they're played together. So there's always going to be one chord that you can kind of make an alteration to in any given key, and that's going to be the chord that's found in the inner circle clockwise position. So no matter what key signature you're in on the circle of fifths, the grouping of 6, whatever grouping of 6 you happen to be in, inner circle clockwise position, which is diatonically a minor chord, which in this case is B minor, you can make that major. So we're going to make our B minor chord within this key into a B major, and it's going to really enhance this classical sound. So again, I could just make a chord progression like... So I played a B major there instead of a B minor. All right, so when you make that chord major, it just kind of adds to this whole classical sound that I'm talking about. All right, so now let's move away from these open chords and let's start playing bar chords. And then more specifically, let's look at specific intervals within these bar chords. So, let's just kind of write a quick chord progression that consists of E minor, G major, D major, C major, and then we're going to have that B major in there, that one chord that we took from a minor and made it into a major. So let's do this. There's your E minor chord rooted on the A string. Here's your G major chord rooted on the A string. Here's your D major chord rooted on the A string. C major, B major. So instead of playing all of the strings, let's just play the root and the third. So the difference between a major chord and a minor chord is the third. A minor chord has a minor third, a major chord has a major third. And that interval for a bar chord that is rooted on the A string is always going to be found on your B string. So if you just want to play your root and third of the E minor chord, it would look like this. For the G major chord, it would look like this. For D major, for C major, and then B major. So if you want, you can hold the bar chord. If that helps you out, you don't have to play all the notes that you're holding. You can just kind of hold it just for reference, and then you can just go. So I'm still just playing the root and the third. I'm just kind of holding the bar chord there for reference. All right, so that's the most important interval of all, is this third, because that really determines what the quality of the chord is, whether it's major quality or whether it's minor quality. So now let's take a look at some chords that are rooted on the low E string, some bar chords. So you have an E minor up here on the 12th fret. You can use your minor bar chord shape up here. And then you could play a G major bar chord shape here on the 3rd fret. You could play a C major on the 8th fret, D major on the 10th fret, B major on the 7th fret. All right, and again, keep in mind where your root and third intervals are for this shape. The spacing between strings is still going to be the same. Your root's going to be on the low E string, and then your third is going to be found on the G string. So for major shapes, it's like this. And then for minor, it's going to be still the same amount of strings between, but it's going to be on the same fret. So here's your minor. So you can kind of practice that, practice understanding where your root third intervals are, spaced apart by, those strings, rooted on both the A string and the E string. That's huge. That's like 80% of the battle here. Thirds is really everything. So now you can kind of make up chord progressions within this key. So you know what your chords are. You have a G major, a D major, a C major. You have an A minor, an E minor, and then you have a B, which is made major. So as long as you know where your roots are on your A string and your low E string, you can kind of just start making stuff up. All right, something like that. So I was just doing all the chords that were part of that key. I was playing just the the roots and the thirds, with the exception of making that B minor chord into a major chord. But other than that, this is all just coming right from the bar chords. So now let's take a look at fifths. So a chord is composed of 3 notes. There's a root, a third, and a fifth. A major chord has a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. A minor chord has a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. So the only thing that differentiates a major chord from a minor chord is the third interval. So if we just focus on roots, fifths, and roots, so just roots and fifths, it really doesn't matter if it's a major or minor chord. Everything's going to remain the same. That's why power chords are so easy to play, because you're basically substituting for major and minor chords by just doing roots and fifths. So we're going to take that whole concept, but we're going to apply it to this whole classical sounding thing. So we're going to find our root on the A string for all these chords, and we're going to use our third finger to find our root. So let's start out with the E. So you have an E here, 7th fret on the A string. So you can always come up to the B string and then use your first finger 2 frets back to find another root. So if your E is here on the 7th fret A string, you're also going to have an E up here on the B string 5th fret. So E and E. All right, and then if you want to find your fifth, you're going to take your pinky and you're going to put it on the same fret that your root is on, but it's going to be on the high E string now. So here's a root, root, fifth. Now, it doesn't matter if I'm doing major chords or minor chords. It's going to be the same shape because the fifth and the root are not altered as far as the interval distance goes. So here's root, root, fifth. If I want to move that up to a G, I would take my third finger, slide it up to the 10th fret, and then do the same thing for the G. If I want to bring it down to the D, I would put it on the 5th fret. If I want to play it on the C, I would put it on the 3rd fret. If I want to play the B, I would come down to the 2nd fret. All right, so it's the same shape. So All right, so that was root fifth. All right, so that sounded pretty cool, and it didn't matter if it was a major chord or a minor chord. The shape remained the same because there was no third in there. So let's say that I do want to go ahead and add the third in there using this new shape where I'm finding the root with my third finger. So for a minor root, your minor root's going to be found on the D string and then 2 frets back. Your major root's going to be found on the D string and only 1 fret back. So I prefer to kind of just ignore the third for this particular shape for minor chords because it's a little trickier to play. It would require you to move your first finger out of the position that it's in and then kind of bar everything so you can still go like this. So that's if you want to get the third in there for a minor chord. I find that kind of tricky because then when I want to go and switch it to a major chord, I have to move my first finger again. So I'm just going to leave the shape the way it is, and I'm not going to play the third for any minor chords. I'm only going to play the third for major chords. So I'm going to play my E like this. But then when I get to my G, I'm going to move that shape up. And it's very easy to hit the third because I have a middle finger available here. So here's my third for this. So for the E minor, I'm just kind of neglecting it. So if you want to get your third in there, you can. Just keep in mind it's a little bit trickier, and you gotta kind of move your first finger out of position. So whatever. At least you know where the third interval is. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about in this lesson is you can take your pinky and even stretch for higher intervals. Now, there's a theoretical reason why the higher intervals are going to work or not work, but ignoring all that stuff, just let your ear be your guide. That's the best thing. Knowing where the roots and the thirds are and, accurately hitting a major chord when you're trying to hit a major chord or accurately hitting a minor chord when you're trying to hit a minor chord, that's the most important thing. If you get that part right, you can use your pinky to hit other good sounding notes, and your ear's going to tell you if it's a correct note or not. So we're going to start off using just these root third combinations again. So for the E minor, we'll do this one. For the G major, we'll do this one. For the D major, we'll do this one. C major, and then B major. So, I'm just using my my index finger and my middle finger to do these chord shapes, or my index finger and my third finger. But I still have my pinky available. So that's going to be the finger that I use to stretch to these higher notes. So the higher notes that I want to be hitting are going to either be a root or a third or a fifth or even sometimes a seventh. So if you want to understand the theory behind that stuff, take a look at the lesson that I posted you or that I linked you to below. It's called Understanding Diatonic Chord Progressions. That explains to you exactly how to determine which major chords and which minor chords are found in a key. And then if you want to go and make them into seventh chords, which chords become minor seventh chords, which chord becomes major seventh chords, which one becomes a dominant seventh chord, and why that's the case. So the theory behind that stuff will be in that lesson. For now, we're just going to use our ear, and we're going to use this root third thing as our basis. So here's the E minor chord. So I have my pinky available, so my pinky kind of would fall nicely right here on the 10th fret of the high E string, so sounds pretty good. If I tried to play it on the 11th fret, it wouldn't really sound good. If I tried to play it on the 9th fret, it wouldn't really sound good. So my ear's just kind of telling me, okay, this is the right one. I got my root and my third correct, I know that. And my pinky just kind of goes there and it sounds good. That happens to be a seventh, in case you're wondering. That's the minor seventh interval. A minor seventh always falls one whole step below the root, which in this case is E. You have an E up here, 12th fret. So here's your minor seventh interval. So you know that that's going to apply to any minor chord. Anytime you have a minor chord and you want to add in that minor seventh, you know how to find it. I want to play an A minor. I want to add in my minor seventh. I want to play a B minor. I want to play a B minor seventh. All right, so that's that one. So let's move to the G chord now. So let's move up here, 10th fret. So that's my major third interval. So, I can reach all the way up here. Here is the note G on the 15th fret of the high E string. That sounds good. Or maybe I might not be able to stretch that far. Maybe I can only stretch to the 14th fret. That sounds all right, but I kind of prefer this one. So that sounds good. So let's move on to the D major part. So D, here's your 10th fret. Here's your third. Major third interval. So I can use my pinky to try and find the note that I'm aiming for. I already kind of know the answer because I've done this before. So the note that I'm aiming for is going to be up here on the 14th fret of the high E string. That's actually going to be the third. You can figure out that that's the third because you have your third here. So if I know that that's my third for a major chord, I know that that's going to remain the same when I slide it down to the C. All right, if I want to slide it down to the B. So let's just do that for now. Sounds kind of nice, right? And again, the basis of this is the root and the third. I'm kind of using my ear to find these higher, pretty melodic notes with my pinky, letting my ear be the guide. I don't have to necessarily know the theory beyond the thirds thing. So I'm down on a G, and the spacing is still the same because it's still just a major chord, so I know where my root, my third is, and then I know that I can stretch to find my third. All right, so hopefully that was making sense. Hopefully you could see what I was doing there. It's all a matter of just, knowing which chords are which chords are major, which chords are minor, within whichever key you're working in. Once you know which chords are major and minor, making sure that you know where your third is. Minor third interval for minor chords, major third interval for major chords. Then knowing where your fifth is. It doesn't matter if it's a major or minor chord, it's just going to be a perfect fifth, which will be in the same spot relative to the root, regardless of whether it's a major chord or a minor chord. And then just using your ear to guide you for whatever other notes that you want to add, using any available fingers that you may have. If it sounds good, then it's going to be the right thing to do. If it doesn't sound good, then do something else. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm you with too much theory. I have plenty of that theory stuff available on zombieguitar.com if you do want to learn more about that. All right, so that's going to do it for this lesson. Any questions or comments, feel free to ask. Thanks for watching.